The auction yard smelled of oil, rust, and sorrow. Creatures from different planets shouted and bargained under the broken roof of the outpost. Some sold rare weapons, others traded exotic pets, and then there were cages, the ones nobody talked about. The ones in the shadows. Inside one of those cages, a girl sat quietly. She was not like the others. She was alien, thin as a twig. Her skin a pale violet with faint glowing lines under the surface. Her left leg was gone from the knee down, replaced with a crude stump wrapped in old cloth. Her arms were marked with burns, and one eye never fully opened. But worst of all was the way she stared at nothing. Like her spirit had already left her body, traders walked past her without stopping. "This one's broken," one alien muttered. "Dead weight," another scoffed. "Not even good for cleaning." She didn't respond, not even when someone threw a bit of rotten food at her. She just sat with her head down, arms wrapped around herself, breathing slowly. Like life was something she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. But in the back of the auction, a man stood quietly. He was human, tall with rough skin and a gray beard. His jacket was torn, boots dusty, and his eyes tired, like he had seen too much war, too much death. Yet his eyes didn't look at the strong, perfect slaves. They stayed fixed on the broken girl in the cage. No one noticed when he stepped closer. He crouched near the bars and said nothing. He just watched her. The girl didn't move, didn't lift her head, but something small changed, a twitch in her hand. A blink of the good eye, a tiny signal, but he saw it. The seller barked. "That one? Waste of time. I'll toss her tonight." "No one wants the damaged ones." The man didn't answer. He pulled out a small chip from his pocket and handed it over. "I'll take her." The seller laughed. "You sure, human? She won't clean, she won't talk, and she probably won't live long." Still, the man nodded. "I'll take her." They opened the cage with a loud creak. The girl didn't resist as they pulled her up. She limped, half dragged, half walking toward the human. Her head stayed down the whole time. He didn't touch her, just turned and walked away. She followed slowly, step by step, as if she didn't care where she was going, only that it wasn't back to the cage. The other buyers watched them leave with strange expressions, some curious, some mocking, some whispering words like madness and pity. Outside, the sun of the desert moon was falling. The wind picked up dust, and old machines lay silent like skeletons under the orange sky. The human's transport was small and rusty, but it worked. He opened the back and pointed. Inside, she hesitated, just for a second. Her fingers gripped the side of the door like she wasn't sure it was real. Then, slowly, she climbed in and sat down, hugging her legs to her chest. Her eyes flicked toward him once but quickly looked away. They didn't speak the whole ride home. He drove across dry land, through quiet fields of junk and twisted metal. His place was on the edge of nowhere, small building with one tower, wind panels, and a workshop full of broken tech. He helped her down, but didn't force her. "You can stay here," he said. "You'll be safe." She stood at the door, like a ghost, silent and still, then walked in, barefoot, dragging the weak leg behind her. He gave her a blanket, pointed to a small room, and left her alone. She didn't sleep that night, only sat by the window, staring at the stars, remembering a time when she used to dream of building ships that could fly between them. But now, she was broken, useless, forgotten. What she didn't know, what she couldn't see, was the man sitting on the other side of the wall, watching her through a small crack in the door, not to spy, but to protect. He didn't know her story, but he had seen that kind of silence. Before, he had worn it once himself, and in that silence, a bond began to formate with words, not with trust, but with quiet presence. The cage was gone, but her spirit was still locked away. The human didn't plan to fix her. He only wanted her to see. She was never truly broken at all. The next morning, the girl sat in the corner of the small room, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were open, but empty, as if she had stopped hoping long ago. The blanket he gave her was still folded. Neatly beside her, untouched, she hadn't eaten the food, hadn't spoken. Hadn't moved much at all. The human walked past the door and paused for a moment. He didn't speak to her. He simply placed a small tray on the floor, a piece of bread, some warm broth, and clean water. Then he walked away again without waiting. Hours passed. The wind outside howled and rattled the old tower. Machines in the workshop buzzed and blinked. She did not touch the food, but her eyes kept moving, always toward the sound of metal and tools from the next room. By the second evening, she was weaker, her head tilted down, and her breathing was slower. She hadn't eaten for 2 days. The human didn't knock. He simply entered and placed a small object on the floor beside the tray, a piece of tech, broken, dusty, but familiar. It was a scanner core, stripped of power, wires exposed. He said only one word, soft and low. Yours. Then he left again. Not looking back, she stared at the piece for a long time. Her fingers twitched slightly, slowly, painfully. She leaned forward and touched the cold metal. Her hand shook, but her eyes flickered with something, memory, maybe instinct. By the third day, the food was gone. The broken scanner had been taken apart, pieces spread out neatly beside her. Wires sorted by color, one coil had been cleaned. The circuits aligned in a strange spiral that only someone trained in old design methods would know. The human found her asleep beside the parts, her hand still resting on the last circuit. He didn't say anything. He quietly took a photo of the layout. Not for record, but for proof for himself that she wasn't gone. Just hidden. Time passed slowly. Days turned into a week. She never spoke, never made eye contact, but she moved differently now. Her limp was still there, but her arms had strength again. She started leaving the room and sitting in the corner of the workshop. Always watching, never close, he would work on broken bikes and scrap engines while she watched from the shadows. Sometimes she would crawl closer and slide a tool across the floor to him, not looking at his face, never saying a word, but the tool would always be the right one. One night, something strange happened. He left a small, broken drone on the bench and walked away. When he returned in the morning, it was gone. He searched the room, but found nothing. He checked the parts shelf, empty. Then he opened the roof hatch, just to be sure. There it was, floating 10 feet in the air, spinning slowly, blinking with soft blue light. The drone had been fixed and upgraded. She was sitting below it, her legs crossed, hands in her lap, head tilted as she watched the drone dance above her like a paper bird. When she noticed him, she didn't run, didn't look away. She simply gave him a slow, careful nod. He walked over and sat down across from her. The drone lowered itself and hovered between them, quiet and calm. After a moment, she picked up a small coil and held it out to him. Her voice was soft, dry, and unsure. But she spoke for the first time. Wrong voltage before. She whispered, fixed now. He didn't smile wide. He didn't clap or cheer. He just took the coil gently and said, "Thank you." That was the moment something changed between them. Not master and slave, not human and alien, just two broken people sitting in a cold room, sharing silence and sparks. That night, she ate without being told, slept with the blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and for the first time did not cry in her sleep. The past still haunted her, and her body still ached with every step, but in the quiet of the workshop, with the soft hum of machines and a human who didn't expect anything from her except her presence, she began to remember something she thought she lost, that she was once a builder, a thinker, creator, and someone had finally seen it again, not for what she lacked, but for what still lived inside her. The desert wind howled like a lonely animal. The sky above the small outpost turned dark as a storm rolled across the sands. Inside the tower, the girl worked in silence, Her fingers moved fast now, steady and sharp. She no longer shook when men handling wires, her body still limped. But her hands remembered who she had been. The human watched from the far end of the room. He didn't speak much, but his eyes always followed her work. She had fixed 2 drones now, repaired a small generator, and even added new life to an old comlink he thought was useless. But she still didn't smile. He knew she carried more than broken bones. Her body had healed, at least enough to stand and move without falling, but her spirit, that was different. There was still something trapped inside hers, something locked away one night. After dinner, he left a dusty box on the table and walked away. Inside were small metal pieces, burned wires, melted glass, all useless junk to most eyes but not hers. She stared at the pieces, touched them one by one. Then, slowly, like waking from a dream, she began building something new. Not repairing, but creating. Her hands moved faster than before, sparks jumping from her tools like tiny stars. She didn't notice him watching her from the doorway. She didn't see the way his face softened, the way his eyes held something close to pride. What she was building, even she didn't know yet, but it felt right that same night. As she worked, a noise came from outside. Low and heavy, not the wind, not the sand. Something else. She froze. The human was already standing at the window, his hand on the old blaster mounted beside the door. He didn't say a word, didn't panic, just watched the girl stepped beside him. Her breath shallow through the dust storm. A large black vehicle hovered just beyond the junk field, sleek and too clean for this area. A red symbol burned on its side. When she recognized, her eyes went wide. She stepped back and whispered a single word: "Hunters." The human looked at her. "For you?" She nodded. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. "Clan, they want me back, not alive." He turned from the window and began locking the doors, pulling old security shields over the windows, powering up defenses she didn't even know he had. She followed him, her heart racing. "Why now?" She asked. "They saw your drone." He answered, "You made it fly too high." She didn't argue. She had known this moment would come. Some part of her had expected it, feared it. The broken were not meant to rise, not in her world, not in her caste. They would rather see her buried than rebuilt. The vehicle didn't attack that night. It waited, watching. She couldn't sleep. She sat in the corner of the workshop, clutching a coil she hadn't finished yet. Her hands shook again. Just like before, he sat down beside her and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he handed her a worn piece of cloth with his clan symbol from Earth. It meant nothing here, but he said softly, "This place is mine, and you're here, so no one touches you unless they go through me." She looked at the cloth, then at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because I've seen people like you before. Built strong, then broken, but not gone." She held the cloth close to her chest. Her breathing slowed. The next day, the vehicle was gone, but deep tracks remained in the sand, a warning they would return. The human began preparing the outpost like a fortress. But it wasn't fear that moved him. It was purpose. He had something to protect. Now she worked beside him, saying little, but her movements were sharp again, her mind awake. That night, when she returned to the unfinished machine she had started building, something inside her shifted. She no longer worked to forget the past. She worked to survive it for the first time. She wasn't just fixing things. She was preparing for war, not against her clan or the hunters, but against the belief that she had no worth. She would show them even if she died trying. The sun burned low on the desert moon, painting the junkyard in deep gold and sharp shadows. The wind was calm for once, but the silence felt heavier than usual, as if something was waiting just beyond the dunes. She stood at the edge of the workshop, staring at the long path of tire tracks left behind by the black vehicle. Her hands were still, but her mind raced like lightning. Behind her glowing eyes sighed the tower. The human cleaned an old plasma rifle. It wasn't just any weapon. It was one he had used long ago in a war he never spoke about. He didn't tell her where or when. But the burn marks on his arms and the steel plates in his shoulder spoke louder than words ever could. She entered without knocking, holding something small in her hand. It was the drone Korth, the same one she had fixed days ago, but now it had been reshaped, modified, its energy signature hidden inside a decoy shell. She placed it on the table and whispered. They tracked through heat pulses. He looked at her, then at the core, and gave a small nod. Smart. She stepped back, folding her arms, not sure what to say next. He didn't ask questions, just picked up the core and added it to his gear. For hours, they worked without speaking, side by side. Her limp slowed her down, but her hands made no mistakes. She built traps from scrap, modified the doors with electric seals, and added motion alarms to the outer walls. It wasn't perfect, but it was ready the next day. They went to the trading post. The market was smaller than before. Many stalls closed early after word spread that bounty hunters were near. But they needed supplies, power cells, water packs, a new stabilizer for the defense turret. She walked beside him, covered in a long cloak, her hood low over her face. Her metal stump tapped softly against the ground, but she didn't hide it. Not anymore. A group of locals watched her from behind crates. One of them, a thick-scaled alien with yellow teeth, grinned as she passed. Didn't think the junkmaster kept pets? He said loudly. The others laughed. She paused, turned her head slightly, and stared at him with cold eyes. He took a step forward, still smirking. What's wrong? Need your human to fight for you? She didn't reply. She simply reached into her satchel and pulled out a small cube less than palm-sized. She tossed it at the ground near the alien's feet. The cube beeped once, then unfolded into a mini turret. It spun once, locked onto the nearest heat source. His foot tanned, fired a soft blue pulse that lit up the dust. The alien yelped and stumbled back, smoke rising from his boot. The others backed away. Stunned silence. She turned and walked on without a word. The human followed, a proud smirk on his face. Back at the tower, the girl worked through the night. She barely ate, barely rested. Her machine, the one she started days ago, was almost complete now. It was something new, something not from her world or his. It was hers alone, a hybrid creation, part drone, part scout, part shield. She didn't know what to call it, but she knew what it was for. When the hunters returned, they wouldn't find the same girl they once tried to erase. They would find something they didn't expect. The wind picked up again just before dawn. A soft hum passed through the ground, low and steady, like a warning. She stood on the roof, staring into the dark horizon. Her eyes narrowed as twin lights flickered in the far distance, moving fast, straight toward them. She didn't flinch, she didn't hide. She simply whispered to the night, "I'm not afraid anymore." Down below, the human powered up the defense grid. The traps were ready, the doors sealed, and the tower stood like a stubborn mountain in the middle of nowhere. They were two souls wounded, exiled, forgotten by their worlds, but now they stood together, not as master and servant, not as builder and soldier, but as a shield and a spark. And the hunters were coming to learn that some broken things learn how to fight back harder than anyone expects. The night was too quiet. Not even the wind whispered through the broken fence outside. The stars above the desert moon blinked like eyes watching from a distance. Then came the sound, soft at first, like thunder far away, growing louder, sharper, until it became the unmistakable hum of engines built for one thing, hunting. She stood in the middle of the workshop, her heart pounding in her chest. Her machine was complete now, resting beside her like a sleeping beast. It looked nothing like the drones of her past. It had wings of scrap metal, a core that pulsed blue, and a shield generator carved from stolen tech. It had no name, but she had poured her pain into it, her fear, Enter fight. The human walked. In armor strapped to his chest, blaster on his back, his eyes met hers, and for a moment, they didn't need words. Only one thought passed between them. Was time they moved fast. The traps were armed, the decoy pulse cores placed in the fields to confuse scanners. The old cum tower hummed with new life, sending fake signals across multiple channels, designed to make the enemies think they were outnumbered. She stayed near the center. Inside the tower, watching the monitors, tracking the heat signatures closing in. 5, maybe 6 hunters, well-armed, moving in formation. They weren't guessing. They knew exactly what they came for. Her, the human, took position near the main entrance, shotgun in hand, eyes sharp. He had fought before. Many times, but this was different. This wasn't for war or pay or orders. This was personal. The first flash came without warning. A flash grenade lit up the yard, followed by energy rounds slamming into the outer walls. One of the traps fired, launching a burst of fire into the sand, but missed. The hunters were too fast. Then came the breach. 3 of them crashed through the sidewall using a magnetic drill. 2 others dropped from above using glider packs. One moved toward the tower, cloaked in active stealth, but she saw it coming. Her fingers moved fast across the console. She sent her machine into the air. Its wings burst open, and it flew straight through the tower window with a scream of energy. The cloaked hunter raised a weapon, but the drone thing slammed into his chest, detonating its shield and sending him crashing into the junk piled. The others paused, confused. They had expected a weak girl, a broken soul hiding behind an old human. Not a defense grid, not a living machine, not a trap that felt like a war zone. The human took to down himself, quick and silent, using smoke and a sharp blade to finish what his old shotgun started. But the last 2 made it inside. She was waiting. She didn't have a weapon. Not a real one, but her eyes were fierce now. And her voice didn't shake when she shouted, "You're not taking me back." They laughed. One stepped forward with a scanner. "We don't want you," he said coldly. "We want what you built." The moment he raised his hand, a hidden turret popped from the ceiling and blasted the gun from his grip. She threw a flash charge at his feet and ducked. The other one lunged, but stopped when he felt the sharp edge of a blade at his throat. The human had returned, breathing hard, covered in dust, eyes burning like fire. The last hunter dropped his weapon and fell to his knees. Silence returned to the tower, only broken by the crackle of smoke and the hum of energy from the ruined machines. Her chest rose and fell fast. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from something new she had fatanned. She had survived. The human sat beside her on the ground, blood on his arm, but he was smiling just a little. "You held the line," he said. Voice rough but proud. She looked at the broken walls, the sparks flying, the machine she had made, still humming softly beside her. "I didn't know I could." She whispered, "You did." He said, "You just forgot." She didn't cry. Not this Tim. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the silence wrap around her like a warm cloak. Not cold, not lonely, just peaceful. "For now, dearest." The tower smelled like smoke and hot metal. Sparks fell from broken wires above, and the defense grid lay quiet and drained. She moved slowly through the wreckage, stepping over fallen beams and scorched ground. Her leg ached, her arm was bruised, but she didn't care. He was down. She found him near the power cell chamber, his back against the wall, blood staining the cloth around his shoulder. His eyes were open, but dim. She dropped beside him, her hands already searching. Shaking, "Stay awake," she whispered, pressing her palms to the bleeding. "Don't close your eyes." He gave her a weak smile. "Guess I'm not as fast as I used to be." "Be quiet," she snapped, her voice sharp with fear. "Save your strength." She dragged him to the workbench, using every bit of her strength. Her machine tried to assist, hovering close, scanning his body. Warning beeps echoing through the room. No med unit, no auto stims, nothing but tools in her hands. Her breath grew faster. Her mind raced through everything she had learned, everything she had built, and then she saw it's the old exo frame from the junkyard, half disassembled, but still active. It had stabilizers, pressure regulators, and a neural link receiver. If she could wire it into his body, just enough to keep his systems running. Just enough until the bleeding stopped. She didn't ask for permission. She worked like a storm. Her fingers flew across the wires, her sleeves soaked in his blood, sparks dancing up her arms. She used parts from drones, spare coils, energy cells from the broken traps, anything she could find. Anything to make the frame breathe life into him. Time lost all meaning. 1 hour passed. Then Taishi didn't stop. She didn't cry. She didn't cry. She just kept going. When the power surge hit, the whole room lit up blue. Her hands flew back as the exo frame snapped to life, wrapping around his shoulder and chest, pumping energy straight into his muscles. A low hum echoed as the frame locked into his skin, fusing old wounds with new metal. He gasped. Eyes wide, she caught him before he fell forward, holding his head gently. Her face was streaked with sweat and grime, but her eyes were clear. You're not dying, she whispered. Not now. He blinked. Slowly, the pain still there but fading under the rhythm of the machine. You saved me, he muttered. She shook her head. You saved me first. After some time, he sat up, his body still weak but alive. The frame supported his arm, glowing faintly with blue lines across his skin. He looked down at the work. Flawed, imperfect, yet genius. She had done what even trained surgeons wouldn't attempt. He looked at her, truly looked at her. She wasn't just a broken girl anymore. She was something else, a fighter, a builder, a savior. Outside, word of the failed bounty spread quickly. Locals whispered about the girl who rewired a man's body using scrap, the one who stopped the raiders with nothing but traps, and encourage offers began to arrive. Message drones landing near the tower, one from a tech guild, another from a noble house, and one even marked with royal seal. Each message praised her skill, her potential, her genius. They offered money, safety, titles, promises, but she burned them all. The human asked her why. She stared at the fire as the last message turned to ash. Her voice calm. I was invisible until I stood beside you, she said. They didn't want me until I became useful, but you saw me before that. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. She walked back to her machine and ran her fingers along its wing. It had taken damage in the fight, but still pulsed with life. Just like Hirsch, she had rebuilt a man. Now, she would rebuild herself, not for anyone else, not for a name or a prize, but because for the first time she believed that she was worth saving. The sun rose slowly over the desert moon, warm light falling across twisted metal and scorched earth. Smoke still curled from the broken walls. But the tower stood strong, and so did she. She stood on the roof, the wind in her hair, her hands resting on the rail. Below, the yard was quiet. Machines were scattered across the sand, some half buried, others still flickering with power. The human sat near the workshop doorway, his arm wrapped in the exoframe. She had rebuilt. He watched her with quiet pride. It had been 3 days since the raid. 3 days since everything changed. She no longer limped it 'cause her leg was healed, was it, but because her steps had purpose now. She moved with balance, with fire, with the memory of what she had done. Others had come not to fight, to learn. The broken, the discarded, the ones called useless by their clans or castes. A small girl missing both arms arrived with her uncle, a quiet boy with no voice, came the next day. Then a tired old alien with rusted implants and shaking hands. They came with nothing. But she saw what no one else ever looked for, what the human had once seen and heard, the strength inside. They didn't ask her name. They called her master now, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. She taught them how to build, how to rewire old tech, how to craft defense walls from scrap and turn fear into function. The tower was no longer a shelter. It was a school, a forge, a second chance one night. She sat beside the human at the fire pit, the stars bright above, and the fields glowing faint blue from the solar shields she helped install. He passed her a cup of warm tea, and for once, she accepted it without hesitation. He looked at her with tired eyes. "You've changed everything," he said. She looked down at her hands, still marked with burn scars and oil. "I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter." He replied, "You did it anyway." A soft beeping interrupted them. One of her machines hovered into view, its wing lights blinking in a soft pattern. It projected a message in the air, a new name not Hurst. There's the school had spread through the networks. A human and an alien girl turning scrap into survival, silence into skill, pain into purpose. They were calling it the Ember Forge. She read the name again and again, her fingers tracing the glowing letters. A tear ran down her cheek, not from sadness, but because someone, somewhere, finally gave her story a name that didn't begin with broken. She stood and walked into the night, toward the small dorms where her students slept. Her machine floated beside her like a loyal pet. She didn't need guards anymore. She had students with fire in their hard sand. Every one of them had been told they were worthless until now. Inside the training hall, she found a small boy struggling with an old panel, wires tangled, sparks flying. She knelt beside him, took his hand, and moved it slowly, gently showing him how to twist the wire, how to listen for the right hum. Not just see the light. The panel lit up. The boy's eyes went wide. She smiled, not a small smile, lay full, one bright and reland. In that moment, she realized something simple and powerful. She had once waited for someone to save her, but now she was the one who saved others, not with weapons, not with strengths, with belief, with skill, with the fire that never died, only needed a place to breathe. The desert wind howled again, but this time it didn't sound empty, it sounded alive. Asterisk.